they hear him. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
All right, here we go. Across the pond, Leo Antel. How you doing today, Leo?
What's going on, Jay? How you doing?
I'm doing good. First thing I want to talk about, since we're a little bit behind on this one, Santor Martin and Mikey Garcia. Did you have any idea? Actually, I think we talked about it a little bit. I don't think anybody saw that win happening. What happens now for Mikey Garcia? Do you have any additional information on Santor Martin? Because I didn't even have enough time, or Sandor Martin, because I certainly didn't do any research on this fellow, but apparently he's a European welterweight champion or something, regional champion.
Yeah, all I know is that he's a Spanish welterweight European champion, like you say. But these upsets happen when fighters are inactive and not hungry, like Mikey Garcia. I think he lost the hunger when he started buying the Lamborghinis. So I don't know.
Possibly. Does this boost Sandor Martin's value? Does he even move up in the rankings for? I guess since he's not a legit welterweight, is he junior welterweight? Because it was a catchweight fight apparently. So I guess junior welterweight. Is Sandor Martin now a factor in junior welterweight?
No, because I'll explain why. It's because one, it wasn't even a title fight of any sort. Because like you say, it was a catchweight fight, and unfortunately for him, I think that it doesn't make him look good. It just makes Mikey Garcia look like he was washed up. So I think he needs to actually fight some of the top guys in that division for him to even be in the picture.
You know, Mikey Garcia is such an interesting champion. He's a 4-division champion, one of the most talented dudes in those smaller weight divisions. But when you see in interviews with even Robert Garcia, I remember seeing in the past, apparently Mikey Garcia never really had it in him or had the vision to become a boxer. He was just naturally gifted at it, strangely enough. So do you think that Mikey Garcia is actually going to retire, or do you think he's going to stay in the game? He left a message about he's not retiring, but a lot of people in the industry that saw it said maybe it's time to hang him up. Do you think it's time to hang him up for Mikey Garcia?
I think after the Errol Spence Jr. fight, it probably took a lot out of him. Because he moved up from, what was it? He moved up from 135 to welterweight. Which is a huge jump. He was eating a load of food. I think he lost nearly every round to Errol Spence Jr. So I think that fight just took it all out of him, and the extreme weight jump was also a factor. Because his fight against Adrian Broner, he looked really good, really fast, really sharp. But when he put on the weight, he lost all his speed, all the factors that were going in his favor. I probably think it is probably time for him to hang them up.
All right, so you don't see the possible, number one, the rematch with Martin. I don't even know if it's worth it for him to pursue a rematch. The prospective fights he had ahead on the docket was, I think, Regis Prograis, Josh Taylor, and Tate Davis. I think he had in his sights. Are those all totally dashed, do you think?
Yeah, I think his name was out of the pit. If I'm really honest, I personally think his name was out of that picture 2 or 3 years ago, after he lost Errol Spence. I think it won't be as interesting anymore. He's just lost to someone who was meant to be a stepping stone. So
yeah, it was a interesting fight to watch. As I watched it, I'm just looking at Mikey like, where's the sense of urgency? Where's the fire in your eyes? Where is all of it? It's like the oomph wasn't there, and it was so weird because he looked very accepting of his situation without any, like, I saw no urgency, not even from Robert Garcia's corner. I'm like, what in the hell is going on here? Like, it was such an unreal fight to watch to me because I was like, where's that extra gear? I'm like, he's missing the gear, and Sandor Martin is just on point. Anyways, it was a fascinating fight to watch, but
very good for Spanish boxing.
Very good for European boxing, period, I think, because it makes everyone take a step back and reconsider, like, hey, well, maybe we're misunderestimating the possibilities here, because I think a lot of times, especially on this end of the pond, every time we hear like a European fighter or a regional fighter that we've never heard of, or essentially the general boxing audience out here, I never heard of Sandor Martin, and I try to keep up on European boxing. I was pretty shocked, but a lot of times we're just skeptical on this side, like, who's this? Is this another Avni Yildirim, or who is this? Like,
yeah, in fairness, there was a show in Italy, and there was a fighter there who had quite a high profile there, and there was a matchroom show in Milan, I think it was. I didn't know the fighters, to be honest with you. I didn't know Sandor Martin either. So I don't think it's just Americans. I think it was everyone really.
Well, most best of wishes to that guy. Hopefully, he builds some kind of at least high high pay fight to make up for all of his hard work that he's put in his career. Mikey Garcia, if he retires now or decides to quit, he's made millions upon millions, started his businesses, and obviously there's the potential avenue of coaching. So more power to him. But all right, there we go. We've covered that subject. What is the
Yeah.
next one we've covered? Let's talk about the real big elephant in the room, Shakur Stevenson and Jamel Herring. What did you think about that performance by Shakur Stevenson?
He looked like a mix of Pretty Boy Floyd and Terence Crawford because he was moving so quickly. I think there was a point where he landed 25 and Jamel Herring to 7 punches or something. It was like 25 to 7 punches in a round. And I just think that was the fight in general was just he was great. It was like the performance of his life because he was relatively flat in his last fight, and people were calling him boring. People were saying, "Oh, he's not what he's been hyped up to be." But this fight, he proved a lot. He beat someone that comfortably knocked out Carl Frampton, and also, I just think he showed that he's at the top. He's the fifth king. He's the dark horse that no one was talking about for whatever reason. But I always really rated Shakur Stevenson. He's a great fighter. Yeah, as I say, he's relentless, but he also gets out of the way of shots. So he's at 24 years old. He's got a lot of facets to his game that will take him to the top, pound for pound king. Hopefully.
Yeah, I see all that in the future for that guy. I was very, very, very impressed. I was like, oh my gosh. It definitely, to me, it looked like when Floyd Mayweather fought Arturo Gotti, he was just standing in front of his face, teeing off on him, and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I watching here? This
Combination
is
was just unbelievable.
Yeah, the way he just sits in front of the person's face, the way he was just sitting in the pocket the whole time, and Jamel Herring is no slouch. He's a defending champion. People will say what they want. Whenever guys like that lose that bad, the first thing they say is, "Oh, he's over the hill. He's 35 years old." But this is the guy like you just mentioned. He just ended Carl Frampton's career, and Jamel Herring has looked really good in his last couple of title defenses. And Shakur Stevenson looked very underwhelming in that fight against Nakatelia. Nakatelia was a much heavier puncher, so obviously he had to be more cautious than he was with Jamel Herring, but he showed very clinical, insane boxing skills, and Fifth King is right, and the entire division got put on burn notice. Junior lightweights, maybe even junior welterweight. I don't know. The sky's the
Yeah.
limit for that kid. And whoo,
Herring's a big puncher though. He's a big puncher. Like I've seen his knockout highlight reel. That uppercut is dangerous. And what I noticed is that Shakur Stevenson had a relatively high guard the entire fight. He was quite upright, and he was throwing combinations so awkwardly for Herring to actually counter him, because he would throw 5 shots, 1 to 5 shots, but just be in out every time. But at the same, he was at medium, he was at mid range almost, not really going too far out the pocket, but he wasn't in the pocket either. So I think he was just keeping him on the end of those combination shots. And I mean, when he was throwing those double right hand hooks, I mean, Jesus, I thought it was unbelievable.
I, I, I don't even know what to say looking at that performance. Just looking at his footwork and his use of distance, and it's a game of inches. When it's that level of fighting, it's a game of inches. And he was just there in his face. He would get out the way, and you would see the glove just miss by inches, and he's just staring wide-eyed and calm and composed, like he's got 10 years of veteran experience.
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted. I was like, oh my goodness, this kid is going to be a certified problem for everybody. Everybody.
What?
Like,
Yeah. What I thought was really interesting was that Jamel Herring was moving to his right every time. He was circling him clockwise because he was. I think he was more used to the south. What's it called? The orthodox fighters. I think it was quite awkward for him fighting another southpaw in Shakur Stevenson. He was almost trying to get on the outside of his lead foot, but that's not really what he needed to do. I think instinctually he's just used to doing that with orthodox fighters. So I think Stevenson was very comfortable getting on the inside.
I was very intrigued by Jamel Herring's approach. Why would you want to outbox or try to outbox somebody that young and gifted? I thought Jamel Herring's only real shot was the same thing I thought AJ should have done, was just made it a dirty fight. I don't know if Jamel Herring's even capable of doing something like that, but he should have used his size. Well, it's all would have, should have, could have armchair coaching, but at this point, there was no chance. As soon as the first round started and he was trying to play the point fighting game, I knew it was over. It's like, no, there's no way he's going to beat him using this style and this approach. Just no.
Yeah,
And you are right. He was going to his right side, and Jamel Herring in the past has had weaknesses on that right side, and his eyes swollen up before in the past. And I knew it was only a matter of time he was just going to bust that eye open. And sure enough, that eye just started to swell shut. And he's always had kind of soft defensive blocking on that side, because that's not the first time I've seen his eye in that condition. But I think
yeah.
Jamel Herring, if he's smart about it, 35, 36, he's accomplished more in his career than a lot of us thought he was going to do. Prior to him going to Bomac, Jamel Herring was kind of an underwhelming dude. He did go to the Olympics, but it wasn't until he went to Bomac where he started actually winning and became a defending champion. But I don't see anybody else at that weight division that Jamel Herring is going to get a belt off of. Not Chris Colbert, not Gutierrez, definitely not Valdez. So I say he should just hang him up and call it a great career. Hopefully he made his money out of it.
Well, you say that, but I think Valdez could have had problems with Jamal Herring.
Oh, anybody in that division right now is going to have problems with that version of Shakur Stevenson. Valdez is my guy. I love that dude to pieces, but that same Valdez that showed up for Conceicao, oh no, that Valdez is going to have problems. And I mean, half a lightweight division would have problems. I'd even put him up there as giving problems to Devin and Ryan and all of them. Like, this kid's a southpaw. Like, how do you even deal with a problem like that, kid? I don't know, but I was impressed. Great coming out party. He got the TKO stoppage. He addressed the critics. Clearly, the critics got into his head about the Nakatelia fight, and I'm glad he did. I'm glad he addressed the critics, because I think,
Tim
especially,
Bradley.
yes, Tim Bradley is turning into the Charles Barkley villain of commentating. He plays both sides. It's fascinating, and I think he's kind of following in the footsteps of Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah, he's doing a good job, because I dislike his take so much, especially with the Josh Taylor versus Ramirez fight. I thought he was so biased throughout that whole promotion, and it came from like almost as if he wasn't a fighter himself. He was just completely ruling Josh Taylor out, and look what happened. So maybe he's just doing it to be controversial. I don't know, but he shouldn't be calling Shakur Stevenson a boring fighter.
I think Tim Bradley just got to a point where he just took the regulator off, and he realized if commentating is what he's going to do, he has to not care about anybody's feelings. And that's the truth be told. In order to be really, really effective at the level of what they're doing as far as commentating and doing boxing analyst and analysis, you got to throw caution into the wind. You really do. You like you and I discussed that one time. There has to be a cringe factor to it, and Tim Bradley is in full on cringe mode, because at the end of that fight, he was all praise for Shakur Stevenson. He was he loves that guy now. Like, he didn't say any of those disparaging remarks leading up to that fight. Now he's like, oh, Shakur is the truth.
It's interesting because also back to the Valdez versus Shakur Stevenson fight. Shakur Stevenson isn't really interested in the Devin Haney's, the Teofimo Lopez's, maybe Javonte Davis down the line, but he's much more interested in unifying and becoming undisputed in that weight category at 130 pounds. So I think that's really interesting, because that means the Valdez fight has to happen next. There's no other fight.
Here's what I think's going to happen. I don't think the Valdez fight's going to happen next. I think Valdez is going to fight Navarrete next in a Mexican super fight. I think he's more concerned with legacy, and I think an all-out slugfest war with Navarrete is more what he's going to be interested in, as opposed to fighting Shakur Stevenson. This is just my theory and my guess on it, because I heard whisperings about Navarrete moving up in weight, and that would make it a fascinating mix-up. But yeah, Shakur Stevenson called out Oscar Valdez, and yeah, that'd be an interesting fight. I don't know if Valdez has the answers for Shakur Stevenson at that level. I saw, not the one against Conceicao. Oh man, that would be a problem. That would be a problem.
I mean, you're as only good as your last performance, but I'm going to cut him the slack, not because of the drug testing and, giving him a break after being accused of using PADs, but what I will say is, when the Miguel Burchell fight happened, that Valdez, he's very good. But I think, and a lot of people were saying, oh, he'll beat Shakur Stevenson. But now, personally, I think Shakur Stevenson flipped the script. And I think most people would say Stevenson takes the W on that fight quite comfortably.
That's what the consensus seems to be to me. That's what I've been gathering from everybody's input. By an overwhelming amount, people think that it's going to be a Shakur Stevenson getting the win over Valdez. And I have no counter arguments to add to that. I mean, Valdez has a lot more heart. I wouldn't say he has a lot more heart than Herring, but he's shown he could deal with adversity. And obviously, Oscar Valdez has that knockout power. But what I saw from Shakur Stevenson is something else. It would be a fun fight to watch. I hope that fight happens. I don't think it's going to happen, because when do those kind of dream fights ever actually happen for us boxing fans? Not this fast. But the sky's the limit.
Starting though, that I think like boxing's active right now. But what I will say is, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but I just think that Valdez is so easy to work out for someone like Stevenson, because he's not got that much to his game. He's very effective at what he does, but I think Stevenson will find it quite easy to work him out. He doesn't actually throw that many different types of shots. He has, his right hand counter, his left hand counter, left hook counter, sorry. And I just think it would be quite basic stuff for Stevenson. I think he'd take him to school. I don't even think Valdez would touch him. Like, I'm not even just saying that. It would almost be like
I don't think it would be
Mayweather Canelo type thing.
I don't think it would be that simple per se. Because I have been watching Valdez for a while, I know that he does take his mistakes he gets from each fight and learns each time. And I know from that Conceição fight at the very end, even he admitted it. There was the video of Canelo talking to him backstage after he was walking back into the locker room. And he knows that he approached it from a very simplistic viewpoint. He kept doing the same type of punches over and over again. I don't expect him to do the same thing with the next opponent that he faces, but I'm still thinking Shakur Stevenson is that dude right now. Just, it was ridiculous, because obviously, as I'm watching that fight with Shakur Stevenson, mentally I'm comparing with everybody else in the division, and I think Chris Colbert would be a fun matchup, but I don't even know if Chris Colbert has enough tools. Chris Colbert can switch hit southpaw to orthodox, and he's very talented, but Shakur that was just a beast performance. Like, whoa. It really reminded me of, like you said, Floyd. It reminded me of Floyd. Like, whoa, he's just standing in the pocket, like, and throwing his hands like it's just easy to do. It is so not easy to do that.
Oh, definitely not. Especially with that type of high guard, because he knew that obviously Herring's quite a lot taller than him, so he had the reach advantage, and I think that Stevenson just completely countered that advantage.
I think people really underestimate how difficult it is to stand in someone's face, duck their shots, and then throw something snappy in return immediately. Like, it's like textbook, like what you imagine in your head I'm supposed to look like when I'm throwing punches, but he just,
It was a beating, like full-on beating.
Yeah. That I've seen Shakur do that several times in other fights. That's just what he does. But this is the first time I saw him actually try to to do some damage. I don't even know if he was trying to do damage. I just don't think that Jamel Herring had an answer for that monster. It was great.
Pace will go up so much. Like, I saw he walked out with Quavo. Kanye West was there. It's kind of mad.
He brought out the celebrities. Jay Prince. And Jay Prince is one of the money guys in boxing. He's already one of the big money guys in the Atlanta hip-hop music scene. And Jay Prince already has his hands in boxing. He's been involved in boxing for a while now. I think he might have had a part in Mayweather's career too, if I'm not mistaken. But I know he's got a part in Shakur Stevenson's career. Wow.
Okay, I think Shakur Stevenson will actually... I know he's not so spoken about now, but honestly, I really do think he's going to be huge. Like, and I mean that.
I can see him kind of working up towards... I can see him like building up towards being the villain, which is the smart move. I don't know if he'll ever be a finisher. Well, we'll probably find out in the next fight. If he wants to be a pay-per-view star, pay-per-view attraction, the only way as a defensively slick fighter like that, you have to be the bad guy. Boxing has been like that from the beginning. The defensive geniuses, The good guys, they don't sell pay-per-views, so he's gonna have two things. He's gonna have a bad guy persona, so he's probably gonna get cringier and cringier, and he's gonna have to fight savages. He's gonna have to fight the scary offensive output guys in order to make fans want to buy those pay-per-views. Meldrick Taylor, Pernell Whitaker, Floyd Mayweather Jr. Defensive fighters always have to have their offensive firepower opponent, and they have to be the cringy bad guy and irritate everybody in order to sell pay-per-view. So I think we're going to see more of Shakur Stevenson being the douche.
Shakur Stevenson came second place in the Olympics, and he said he vowed that he'll never lose again. Like, he'll never have that feeling again. And I kind of believe him. I really don't. I think he wants it more than anyone. I've never seen someone take defeat as badly as him. He refused to wear the medal. He was crying the entire way through the podium. Yeah, I just think...
I didn't even see that. I didn't see that. Crazy.
Yeah, the 2016 Rio Games. I mean, I'm telling you now, he is very unlikely to lose. I just think he's got the heart of a lion. And although you say he's a defensive genius, I mean, he showed that he's a bit of an offensive genius as well. And a good offense is a good defense. So I think he's got a lot to his game. I think he can switch on whatever style he wants. He can adapt to the situation. And I don't think he'll be like Floyd, because I think he's got a much more ruthless style to him. So, and he's a southpaw. He's a completely different fighter. He's unique in his own sort of way. He's quite tight, but at the same time can throw these combinations. He's not like Valdez, who you'd say is almost like throws those nice looping shots over the top, that right looper, and then followed by like a nice left hook, long left hook. I think he's tight, but he can throw more shots.
Oh, he keeps his form tight and he's relaxed. You can see in his face that he's just not even... Oh, it's beautiful. He's not even breathing heavy in the corner. He's not even breathing heavy in his corner. Like, that's just amazing. You can see Jamel Herring's...
I think it's very frustrating for Herring to basically miss all his shots. I think that you've got a long night ahead when you're missing from the jump of the fight.
What do you think about a potential future super fight between Shakur Stevenson and Tank Davis?
Look, it's an amazing fight. I think that's huge. Like, I think that's bigger than the Ryan Garcia versus Tank fight on pay-per-view. I'm not even just saying that. I think once Shakur Stevenson builds that mega profile, I think that's even more entertaining than the Tank Ryan Garcia fight. And I can see it happening.
Who do you think would win versus Tank and Shakur?
It's hard to know because, look, Shakur Stevenson has a much better amateur career. He had amateur pedigree, went to the Olympics, amazing amateur record. Whereas Tank went pro very early on in his career. He went pro at like 18. So it's hard to know. I think give it 2 years. I want to see more fights from Shakur Stevenson, but I can see him beating Tank.
I feel like Tank is he's one of those guys that loves his power, and you could tell. Plus, we've never even really seen Tank get tested enough to see what his boxing skills really truly look like, unfortunately. It's like Errol Spence Jr. in the early part of his career. He was just so dominant. We didn't really know he could box until he fought Mikey Garcia. Now we see, Tank Davis looks like he just sits there, stands in the pocket and waits for that power shot, but Tank Davis also has a deep amateur pedigree, some national titles under his belt, but definitely doesn't have the Olympic pedigree.
Of course. Which no, don't get me wrong. He's got amateur pedigree, but I mean, not to the same extent as Stevenson. Going to the Olympics is a different ball game.
Absolutely.
It's funny. Tank's easily like one of my favorite fighters right now. But yeah, if that fight happens in 3 to 4 years, Stevenson could definitely take it. I'd like to see Tank, as you say, in more boxing matches, just to see what his IQ is like. Because basing it on the Leo Santa Cruz fight, for example, he's quite similar to Canelo in some senses. He's very patient, and he can take quite a lot of damage until he just pulls out that knockout shot in the later rounds.
I have to agree with that. And like I said, I think that's a big part of that is him not having faced any threatening firepower type of punchers up until this point in his career. So I do believe that Tank is capable of a lot more boxing than what we've seen. I'm assuming he is because of his deep amateur pedigree. It's just a matter of getting him in front of another type of fighter that has a scary level of pop, which actually is going to lead me into the next subject. His next opponent, Roly, Roly, Roly. How do you
Yeah.
feel about Roly
Um,
versus Tank?
I think it's it's intriguing. I'd say that's the best word to say. Like you know, we all want to see it, um, but it is a very strange matchup. I never thought it would happen because Rolly hasn't had that many fights, but at the end of the day, he does have that WBA interim belt. Um,
Which many say he was gifted. If
he is a bit of an email champion, but I'll say it'll be. I think Tank comfortably wins that fight, and when you hear Rolando Romero's sparring partners like Devin Haney dismiss that fight, it kind of puts it into perspective that they're just trying to build it up into this knockout puncher. He's got that big punch on him, almost like a Deontay Wilder. But I think Tank is a big puncher and can box, so I don't see what Rolly can do to give him problems. Maybe he catches him flush, but I don't think he'll knock him down or out.
so you don't think Roly even has a chance?
Tank knocks him out in mid to late rounds.
I'm so fascinated by this matchup with Rolly and Tank. I loved it. He trolled his way into a championship fight with one of the most dangerous young talents in the game. And I'm so fascinated by that because we've been watching him troll for years and he finally got a fight and we're just like, this is what you wanted. It's what you wanted, Rolly. You
Balls were
wanted
legit fighters though.
yeah, yeah. He
No
wanted
doubting it.
he wanted that Tank fight. He wanted that Ryan Garcia fight, and now they're about to give it to him. So that's what he wanted. That's what he's gonna get. Okay, that first press conference between Rolly Romero and Tank Davis. Was there a winner in that, and does it even matter?
No winner. I just think you can't win a press conference. And as I say, unless you're Tyson Fury getting in the head of Vladimir Klitschko, you're not playing intense mind games. Tyson Fury is a master of the mind, so he's a different story. But I just don't think Rolly dressing up as a pimp.
What about like Roberto Duran breaking down Sugar Ray Leonard at the press conferences, or the way Mayorga used to get under people's skin? Although I don't know if he won anybody in a press conference. He did beat Vernon Forrest, but I don't know. I think sometimes press conferences can be effective if you're really a master at the mind games, which not many fighters are. But Rolly definitely didn't win that press conference either way. So
No, like at all. So it was like, I just.
I was so disappointed because here's the thing about Rolly. He sells such an awesome persona on social media, on his IG lives, on his posts, and I felt like the wind got taken out of my sails at that press conference. I was like, Rolly, you're supposed to like, because Tank is a very soft-spoken, quiet person. Tank doesn't talk much, so he should have won that press conference and just ran circles around Tank. And Rolly Romero definitely looked like he was nervous, like he knew he shouldn't be there. And I'm like, oh, you are projecting insecure, nervous energy, Rolly. Don't do that. Don't do that. Like,
I think he's kind of ruined the pay per view mega fight there. I think everyone knows that he shouldn't really be in that fight, so I don't think it's a big fight as much as it was. Maybe they'll do a better job and he'll get some media training. He definitely needs it, but he was shaking and mumbling. It was kind of awkward to watch. It wasn't like one of these things where you cringe. It was more like, oof, that is rough. Like I almost felt sorry for him that he hadn't had media training. And you say that Tank is soft-spoken and whatever, but he's actually become much more of a personality, but his fists do the talking. He's so entertaining on Instagram and in his actual fights that he doesn't need to do too much talking anyway. He's not like Conor McGregor.
at all. Tank's one of those guys that speaks with his hands. That's his thing. Tank is I'm from Baltimore. I'm gonna let my hands do the talking. And why not? When you have that kind of power and that kind of skill set, most guys who have that kind of knockout capabilities, Deontay Wilder being the exception. I just think about Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was the same way. He was kind of quiet, very soft spoken, but inside that ring you had a problem, and Tank was not playing around with Rolly at the press conference. I actually sent messages to Rolly on Twitter. I was like, yo, it's all good. Get him in the next round, my guy. You need to relax and be yourself. If you got any chance to get inside or under Tank's skin, it's going to be at the press. If there is even a possibility at it, which I don't know at this point because he looked very unsure of himself. And I was like, Rolly, you got to sell yourself as self-confident if you want any shot at this. You got the fur coat looking like the brown Conor McGregor, but you got to use that Mystic Mac mouthpiece if you want something, some kind of progress.
Yeah. Look, I just think he's a big puncher, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of big punchers, and Tank will be comfortable in that ring with him. He's very awkward, don't get me wrong. Someone like Ryan Garcia, you could see in that sparring that he was finding it very awkward and difficult to handle. But I just think Tank is much more elusive and can roll his shoulders better. Ryan Garcia is very upright, tight. So they've almost got a similar style in some ways, Rolando Romero and Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia is obviously much better, much more pedigree, whatnot. But they're both quite tall, tight, power shot characters, and I think that Tank has both their numbers. So I think he'll beat them both. Not
Well, he definitely. It's not going to be to Rolly's benefit to try to get in close and tangle it up with Tank. Tank is the smaller guy with more with a lower center of gravity. So on the inside, Tank might eat him up badly. So it's going to be fascinating. If he tries to tangle up with Tank and make it ugly like that, Tank is the smaller, shorter dude. It's never a good idea with educated boxers that are smaller than you to just get in close with them like that, because we know Tank has those uppercuts and it will put you to sleep.
Yeah, I think I can see Tank just getting on the inside, uppercut, Rolly going to sleep. Straight up, like I think he's actually getting brutally knocked out in this fight.
We got the Tank, Rolly, Tank Shakur. What is the next subject? Jojo Diaz and Devin Haney.
Yeah, Jojo Diaz, Devin Haney.
So it looked like Ryan Garcia was going to get that fight. That fight fell through. Now we got Devin Haney and Jojo Diaz. How do you like that matchup?
Yeah, confirmed for December 4th or 3rd. I think Devin Haney comfortably wins that fight. I don't think he's going to get tangled up on the inside like Javier Fortuna did. I think he's just going to keep him at distance, keep him on the jab. And I think it will be quite similar to his performance against Jorge Linares.
You think it's just going to be a clinical picking apart of Jojo Diaz?
Yeah. I don't think he's going to knock Jojo Diaz out. Maybe he'll stop the fight in the late rounds. Who knows? But I think it'll be quite similar to Jorge Linares. Diaz is a warrior. He's not going there to lose.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't want to just write off Jojo Diaz because I've seen him really pull through in some very tough fights in the past, and he's one of those guys that takes on anybody, and that's the reputation he's kind of developed. And unfortunately, people. The word ducking is not the word I want to use, but definitely they avoid the fights that we all want to see. And he's never been one to avoid the fights, whether it be Gary Russell Jr., Javier Fortuna, who for some reason or another was low-key avoided by people. And then there was Tevin Farmer, who was supposed to fight Tank Davis at some point or another, but that fight never materialized. Jojo Diaz took it on and won. I think Jojo Diaz is a dog. I think this is going to be clearly the toughest test so far of Devin Haney, and I think Devin Haney hopefully proves himself in this, but I wouldn't just totally discount Jojo Diaz like that. But I think favoring Devin Haney in this matchup.
What's quite interesting about it is that he's moved up. So I remember him being in the mix with like Tank Davis, Tevin Farmer. At one point, the Tevin Farmer Tank Davis fight was like the biggest thing in 2018, 2017. So I remember him in that mix, in the lighter weight mix, and now it's interesting seeing him in the 135 division, calling out people like Ryan, Devin, Teofimo Lopez, maybe, you never know. But I'd love to see him fight. I think that fight with Devin Haney is a good fight, but he'll be ruled out. I think he's got one chance to beat Devin, and if he doesn't, his name won't be in the mix with Tank, Teofimo, or any of those guys. But if Devin loses that fight, I think he still maintains his persona and his right to be there.
Now, if Jojo beats Devin Haney, does Jojo Diaz enter that conversation in the lightweights as being one of the best in the division?
Well, I guess, yeah, he does, because, in my opinion, everyone disagrees with me, but I think Devin Haney comfortably beat Jorge Linares. I know his legs buckled later rounds. He didn't fall. He didn't drop. So everyone's just trying to basically bring him down back to reality, but Devin Haney is going to be at the top when he moves up in weight, he'll be at the top of the game. So I think he had Jorge Linares on lock the whole night, had his number, and at the end of the day, Jorge Linares dropped Loma. So I can't see what Jojo Diaz could potentially do. I think he could make it a war, but I just don't think Devin Haney, if he doesn't want to, he can just keep him on the end of his jab all night if he wants to.
Oh,
He's
Devin Haney definitely
massive.
put on a master class against Linares. He got caught slipping in that 10th round or something like that. But oh yeah, Devin Haney looked really good. Probably has the best jab out of all those youngsters at 135 for sure. His jab is something special. But yeah, maybe he'll. Now that you're talking to me, I'm like maybe he will pick apart Jojo Diaz. I lean towards I would lean towards Devin Haney to win. I don't know if it would be like a landslide win, but now that you're talking about it and I'm looking at Devin Haney's skill set, like maybe he'll keep him at the end of his jab.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe he'll want to show that he's also an exciting fighter, like Shakur did. Maybe he'll actually throw amazing combination shots and get that knockout like he did a few fights ago before the Gamboa fight. If you remember, he got that huge overhand right.
Do you think the reputation is shot out for Ryan Garcia at this point after pulling out of his third fight?
Well, about 8 fights. Like he pulls out. He was meant to fight Jorge Linares in 2019 in July. He was meant to fight Javier Fortuna. He was meant to fight Jojo Diaz. So yeah, he's pulled out of 3 fights. I think he's pulled out more fights before as well. It's not his fault. I don't think the hand injury is fake or anything like that. I think he's just having a rough period at the moment, but he really needs to get on the wagon and prove why we actually want to see him fight. Because at the moment, I think he's almost out the picture a bit. He just doesn't fight. He's turning into what people are calling him, an Instagram fighter. I'm frustrated because I really like him, and I think that's like the rest of the people. He's become quite polarizing for the wrong reason in that he pulls out fights.
I agree. Unfortunately, I want to see Ryan Garcia do well. I think the potential, his potential ceiling for success, I believe, is just astronomically high. Clearly, with the size of his following, but if he doesn't fight, then he's just kind of
Worthless.
destroying his own reputation. So I'm curious to see how it works out. Like, is he the visionary that he sold himself to be? That he's going to be this guy that becomes this champion and does movies and stuff, or is he going to be a crazy pop fizzle bust byproduct that we see of this new social media era? I don't know. It's he's
Both.
like both.
I don't think. Who knows? But if I'm being honest, I think all these top guys beat him. I think Tank beats him. I think Devon beats him. But look, he needs. Let's see. It's early days, isn't it? So I can't judge too much. But Shakur Stevenson, for example, would pick him apart. Yeah, I don't know. He might be similar to De La Hoya. It would be nice to see him just call out the best, lose some fights, but be in exciting ones too.
I guess we're going to find out soon enough. I really want him to do well because I feel like he would bring a lot of new eyes to the sport, which he actually kind of already has. But yeah, he's developing a reputation as a excuse maker, and that's on his doing. And boxing fans are unforgiving, and they don't really care. I feel like boxing fans are unforgiving to a fault. I'm not sure why boxing fans are like that, but as soon as a fighter has to pull out of a fight or whatever, they're instantly lying. It's a conspiracy. These hospital photos are fake, and to me, it's beyond my comprehension of why boxing fans are like that.
Well, I might have to disagree with you there because I'm not sure I'm so convinced by the Dylan White injury.
Yes, the Dillian White injury.
I'm not
Okay,
convinced.
so let's talk about these injuries, right? Do is it obligatory that these fighters prove through photographs and stuff? Do they need to prove to us, to the general boxing audience, that they're not lying about their injuries? Is that necessary in this day and age? Should they be providing us proof?
Yeah. COVID times, yes, because what I personally think was, I don't think that White Wallen fight was going to do numbers, and I also think it was high risk, low reward. So, and I can already see Eddie Hearn saying Tyson Fury is the next fight. They've just forgotten about Otto Wallen. He's just out the picture now. So I definitely think, I'm not saying it was fake, but I definitely think it's convenient. Because why is he now skipping the Wallen fight and going straight into Tyson Fury if he fights Tyson Fury in March? Because Tyson Fury is fighting in March.
I agree. I know the Wallin camp is demanding medical proof, and I think they have every right to because, like you said, it looks like they're really just trying to step over Otto Wallin and go straight into the Tyson Fury big money fight, and that is a damn shame. Like, is that where we
Yeah,
are?
it's a shame. But, that's just heavyweight boxing for you. They want to make the biggest fights. Um,
I think it would have been a great scrap. I think Wallin might have actually. I think I might have probably leaned towards Wallin in that fight. To be honest, I feel like Wallin has a good gas
yeah.
tank, and after what he did to Tyson Fury in his most recent fight against Dominique Brazil, I think that was his last fight. He's ready for a guy like Dillian White.
Oh, look, he's definitely ready for him. But I think there's a lot to go off with Dillian White, and also he's not consistent in his performances. When he went to, was it Abu Dhabi or Dubai or wherever he fought that one time, he had put on an insane amount of weight, looked sluggish, looked terrible. He'd been inactive for a while. But when he fought Chisora, every time he turned up for that fight, sometimes he just doesn't show up. He doesn't show up on the nights. He didn't show up on the night against Povetkin, the first fight. I mean, he did, and he had a good game plan, but he didn't lean towards his strengths. He tried to outbox Povetkin, who is a better boxer, and he paid for it when he got knocked out. He was too patient. He wasn't the same maximum violence as we've seen. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of game plan he brings to an Otto Wallen fight, who's a great boxer.
Well, hopefully we get that matchup. I think Dillian White, outside of the big guys, I don't really know if anybody has as stacked a resume, strangely enough, as Dillian White. I feel like he's fought more of the top heavyweights in the game than anybody. Like, it's Hellenius, Watch, everybody. He fought Anthony Joshua, lost to him. I think didn't he fight Joseph Parker, right? I mean,
Yeah, beat him.
the guy's fought everybody, but he's been the WBC mandatory for like 2 years now or something.
Well, yeah, but then he lost to Povetkin, so he screwed it up.
Yeah, that takes him out of the. Yeah.
Yeah, so it hasn't relatively because he lost that fight. But if he had beat Povetkin the first time, then it would be, there would be a bigger campaign for it. But after he lost to Povetkin, I think that campaign was ruined to get that WBC
Okay.
title
Yeah, you're
fight.
right. You're right. Well, that shuts down Dillian White. Okay, we've covered that subject. What is the one we haven't covered yet?
A few if you want to hear them. Okay, we've got 10 minutes, so... Oh my god, this is the first one I need to go over with you. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Gennady Golovkin, potential for May 2022.
Are they finally? Wait, hold on. Because isn't Gennady Golovkin supposed to fight Ryota Murata?
No idea.
Okay, I thought Golovkin was. This is the rumor I heard. He was going to fight Ryota Murata in 2021 in December, which I don't know if that in a title unification fight for middleweight. Chris Eubank Jr. has been trying to get this Triple G fight for years, and can somebody give him this Triple G fight so like we could just be done with this Chris Eubank Jr. chapter? Like
He'll get sent into retirement.
Like you just give him Triple G and watch what happens. I love the fact that that's Chris Eubank's son, but somebody give him a real headhunter, elite level middleweight so we can dash all this talk.
Yeah, I think to just get sent into retirement. He's been fighting journeyman on that new promotional platform Boxer on Sky Sports. Didn't even fight one, funnily enough. I mean, he's set to fight soon. I mean, from jumping from that to Gennady Golovkin is just beyond me. I think he won't even put a dent. Not even. I think he'll get stopped in 7 rounds. He's got a granite chin. But I think Golovkin wouldn't even feel those pitter-patter shots of his, those machine gun shots. And I just think he would go to sleep or it would get stopped by TKO.
I absolutely agree. I'm fascinated by how Chris Eubank Jr. has so much drawing power with the media off the simple fact that his last name is Eubank. It's fascinating because Any fight I've ever seen him in is severely. It's just when you watch his skill set, it's like, why are we watching you? Because of his last name. And if he wants that Triple G fight, give it to him. Give it to him so we can be done with this. Because Triple G will give him everything he hopes for and feed his dreams of becoming a great. Because I don't see what he will do against even a 39, 40-year-old Triple G I think will lay waste to Chris Eubank Jr.
Yeah, I mean, Golovkin could be 50 and still do a job on him.
Yeah, so give it to him. Give it to Chris Eubank Jr. so that we can kind of close this chapter and move on to the Conor Benns and Tim Zoos of the world.
Yeah.
We saw Evander Holyfield's son knock somebody unconscious. We saw Nico Ali Walsh knock somebody out roughly with the TKO stoppage. Like it's interesting to see all these kids and these grandkids. This is boxing. The history of the sport runs so deep that we can see stuff like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chris Eubank Jr., he has not a chance against Gennady Golovkin. I don't think anybody realistically sees that.
Yeah, we all see through that fight. Golovkin would comfortably beat him. Okay, so that's that. Okay, I've got your take on that. The next one was Errol Spence versus Yordenis Ugas. That's a good one.
Well, I heard the WBA is making Yordenis Ugas fight some unknown mandatory, and Yordenis Ugas is trying to file an injunction to fight Errol Spence in the unification fight. So are they going to make Yordenis Ugas fight this mandatory?
I don't think so. I think he'll just fight Errol Spence next. Personally.
That is a great fight. I don't think Yordenis Ugas has the skill set it would take to beat a guy like Errol Spence Jr., but I have been very surprised with Yordenis Ugas in the past. Obviously, the upset win over Manny Pacquiao. And then, for all intents and measurements, I thought he kind of should have maybe got the nod against Sean Porter. Not saying it was a robbery, but he really kind of put it on Sean Porter, but they gave Sean Porter the win, which is very confusing. I'm not knocking it. It is what it is, but I think it would be a very competitive fight. I think people would write off Yordenis Ugas, but I think Errol Spence Jr. would win that fight.
Yeah, that fight, and then winner of Crawford versus Porter, they need to fight each other. So personally, I think it's just going to be Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence. It's all leading up to that. I think they know they need to make that fight. That's the fight that everyone wants to see. It's a great time for it, really, because they're both. I mean, they kind of are in their primes, aren't they?
Roughly, they're there. I think everyone's a little frustrated that Bud Crawford is 33 years old or something to that effect, which we would have preferred maybe in the late 20s. But thus far, I haven't seen any deterioration in Bud. Spence, I feel like maybe he might have lost a step or two from what I've seen in his last fights, but he has also been stepping up in competition, so it's hard to gauge. But Spence definitely hasn't been that dominant force of nature he was when he was on his run post car crash. But it would be the fight everyone wants to see. We've all been wanting to see it for years. Errol Spence Jr. and Bud Crawford. That is the fight. That's the super fight for hardcore boxing fans. I don't know if the general public will view it as a super fight the same way we would, but the boxing world would be all eyes and ears.
And who wins it?
I'm a Bud Crawford fan, but I think most people would lean towards Errol Spence. I'm a Bud guy. I think Bud just brings too much skills to the table. But Errol Spence has the resume. He's fought the tougher competition at welterweight, so I can see the Spence argument. But as far as stylistically, I just like Bud's skill set. And I do think that Errol Spence was a little bit affected by that car crash.
I don't know. I don't think he was, personally. I think he's fine. I don't know. With the eye thing, the eye is a dangerous injury.
Who do you think wins between Bud and Spence?
I lean towards Crawford. Because I just think that, I think Errol Spence has been quite inactive, and I think Bud is as relentless as him, and will be able to get on the inside. Southpaw on Southpaw, it's a great fight. I think, who knows? That's why it's so great of a fight. But I definitely lean towards Bud Crawford winning that fight.
If those two want to step into the realm of legendary fighters, they need to fight each other. And Bud has claimed that he's not interested in that fight. I don't believe that for a second. I think deep down he knows if he doesn't want to just be a highlight note inside the boxing history books, he needs to fight Errol Spence Jr. Just like Aaron. Yes, I
It's a
would
good
love to see that.
fight. We all want that. We all just basically they know that it's the only fight that people truly care about.
And I feel so bad that your casual boxing fan seems to think that the fights that aren't happening in boxing because those two haven't fought. It's so infuriating. I'm like, yo, there's so many good fights that have been going on in boxing all year. Boxing doesn't just revolve around Bud and Spence, but that's the big hang up phrase for critics of boxing. Well, the major fights aren't happening. When are Bud and Spence going to fight? There's always those kind of fights that don't get made in boxing, but you don't convict the whole entire genre of sport just because that one fight isn't happening. Every era has those kind of fights. We had to wait all those years for Pacquiao Mayweather. We had to wait hella years for Holyfield Tyson. These things happen. Sometimes the fights don't even materialize. Aaron the Hawk Pryor, Sugar Ray Leonard, but
Not complicated. I think these promoters know that these are the facts. They need to make that fight. And we just saw PBC and Top Rank come together to an agreement for Wilder versus Fury. So I don't see why it would be complicated. They know the terms. So I think that fight will happen after both of them have dealt with their challenges ahead.
is Kell Brook and Amir Khan happening?
I don't even care anymore. I've given up. I don't care. No one cares anymore.
Does the UK not even care about that fight either?
Well, Khan was in Jamel Herring's camp. I don't know if you saw Blood, Sweat and Tears by Top Rank, but yeah, he's in that camp, so he's obviously training. And if they are going to fight, they're obviously just going to fight each other because there's no other fight. No one cares about them anymore. Hopefully it happens. I'm pretty indifferent at this point. I'm much more interested in the up-and-comers.
Yeah.
Not the over the hills.
They blew that bag. They could have had a huge fight about 5 to 8 years ago.
Huge fight. I mean,
Big.
yeah, they completely blew that, and I think needed those things to happen for boxing to learn. And I think boxing has learnt from that because I think we're all in agreement. Even the promoters, I think they'll all say, yeah, we fucked that up.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm hoping that Crawford versus Spence happens because we've had time and time again, we've seen where they can't make an agreement and then the fans don't get what they want and they could have made a load of money. So I just can't see it not happening. It would be so stupid. Like, I don't see the benefit of it not happening.
It'll be great for boxing. And if what I've seen in the last year or so is any indicator, I think the fight's going to happen. Boxing has been doing remarkably well this last year. In 2022, the projection for next year is looking, I'm pretty sure we're going to see some of those young 4 lightweights throwing Shakur, so now there's 5. I'm sure we're going to see some matchups with them. They don't have a choice. That all roads lead to each other. They've already cleared out all the lesser fighters that we don't want to see, unfortunately. And at some point, they have to fight each other. Otherwise, their potential at building a legacy is done because their window is already this small.